Hi, everybody, and welcome to Talk of the Bay, your flagship news hour on KSQD 90.7 FM in the Santa Cruz and Monterey Bay areas. Today we have a very special and important show, which I'm calling The Midterms Are Coming, The Midterms Are Coming. And that has to do with my own personal feelings of overwhelm about how to engage with the coming midterms. They are perhaps one of the most important elections in our lifetimes, except for perhaps the last one, depending on how you cut it and how you slice it. We have some very special guests with us today. We're going to check in on all of them, make sure that all of our clean feed lines are working. We have Alvin Dawkins. Alvin, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Wonderful. So, Alvin, I'm going to introduce you, and then we'll get into a conversation. I'll introduce everybody first while we're getting folks online. Alvin Dawkins, you may have heard him before as my co-host on Moment of Truth here on KSQD. He is a musician and a writer and author of the forthcoming book, From Prison to Purpose, A Hero's Journey. From being born in prison, adopted, and growing up in the ugliness of Alabama's Jim Crow, segregation, and apartheid, in the heart and center of the 1960s civil rights movement for voting, civil, and human rights. From struggling with lifelong, severe, at times debilitating depression, ultimately leading to a series of powerful spiritual experiences. Inspired and informed by these life experiences, in addition to a master's degree in spiritual psychology, Alvin is drawn towards enlightening and honest conversations around unconscious bias, white privilege, and racism, and how these often shape and inform many white spiritual communities. Welcome, Alvin.
Thank you, Amy. Great to be with you this evening.
Yeah, I have to add that Alvin and I have done a lot of reporting on working together on my YouTube channel, Heart of America, and here on KSQD, tracking national political movements. And Alvin is just a wealth, a treasure trove of knowledge on history, Supreme Court history and congressional history and presidential history, especially in relation to the civil rights movement and Black Americans. And so I'm just so pleased to have you on with us today, Alvin.
Same here, Amy. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And then Rene Bloch, are you there?
Yes, hello. Thank you, Amy.
Hey, okay, I can hear you loud and clear. Rene is with Swing Left. He has been one of our Democrats of the year. The other one actually is a host on K-Squid on the weekends right now. But Rene, when were you the Democrat of the year for Santa Cruz County?
Probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
But every year is a big year.
We still have that glow, probably. Rene's parents were survivors of Nazi Germany. Rene's been a lifetime activist, vocational rehabilitation counselor, and administrator of rehabilitation counselor and administrator, Santa Cruz hiking organizer, and retired marathon runner, and also the lead for Swing Left Santa Cruz since 2017. He organized Santa Cruz Get Out the Vote letter writing in 2018 through letter writing parties that generated 60,000 Get Out the Vote letters. I was a part of those parties to swing states and House districts. Rene also organized a dozen Santa Cruz canvassers for the Central Valley in California to help flip the House in 2018, and up to 100 people carpooled each time to do the work. Rene organized 35 Santa Cruz people in January of 2020 to do college voter registration in Arizona. He organized 4 trips to Arizona for voter empowerment, and Arizona flipped blue for president and Senate by only 10,000 votes. So we know Rene was part of that. Thank you, Rene.
Thanks to everybody.
Yeah. And he is also currently the lead for 2022 Bay Area efforts to defend Nevada, I believe, in the House. And we're going to talk about that because there are some amazing opportunities. That's what we're going to get to at the end of the show, is how can everyone plug in during this very, very critical midterm season. I also am hoping we can get Julia Daniel on the line. Is she there now?
Yes, I think I'm here now.
Yeah, okay. Sometimes it's hard to know. Are we here? Julia Daniel is with SURJ, Showing Up for Racial Justice National. She also does local work in her community. They comes to anti-racist organizing, seeing it as the key to our collective liberation and the right thing to do. Most of her organizing experience is with young people fighting the schoolhouse to jailhouse pipeline in Miami. Actually used to live in Miami. You're talking about Miami, Florida, yes?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay, great. And she helped found the Boulder, Colorado SURJ chapter. She's currently completing a dissertation in education policy and lives in the Bronx, New York. Julia identifies as upper working and lower middle class. So what does that mean, Julia? Upper working class and lower middle class, kind of in between those two.
Yeah, class is complicated in this country.
Yeah.
And I think it's about our relationship to power. But I grew up with some stability, and my parents, struggled a bit to make ends meet. So.
Okay, great. And I want to make a note about SURJ and Swing Left, since we have two representatives on the line with us. SURJ stands for Showing Up for Racial Justice, and in terms of their midterm program, their description of it is that it is designed to block white supremacist organizing, build progressive political power in key southern and Midwestern states, and grow our collective base of anti-racist white people trained in using electoral work as a tool to bring millions of white people alongside communities of color to win progressive power. I am so interested in that because I've always felt, when talking about racism and sexism and homophobia, all the issues that we have that are sort of really starting to get very intense right now in this country, that racism in particular is a white person problem in this country. And therefore white people need to deal with it. And that is what I understand SURJ to be, as an organization of white people standing up for social and racial justice. Is that a good description? Is there anything you want to add to that, Julia?
Yeah, that's a great description. I really appreciate it. We say we focus in majority white communities, but we're not a white-only organization. And we believe that the right has done a really concerted effort for the past 50 years to develop a Southern strategy, and really since the history of this country, but has worked to divide white working people from being in solidarity with working class people of color.
Right.
And strategically uses racism as well as sexism and, homophobia to keep these kind of top-down power dynamics that allow them to hoard wealth and influence. And so our organizing is to invite white people, into understanding that we actually have a shared interest in undermining those systems that actually take kind of wealth and power away from the majority of us. Unless you're like kind of in the 1%, you're also being exploited by that system. And we believe that white people can be invited into and participate in something much better than white supremacy, and that the work we're doing in the South is a really key piece of that work. So I can talk more about that, but yeah, in a nutshell, that's how we're thinking about this work.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me. And we also have Rene Bloch from Swing Left. Rene, do you want to talk about what Swing Left is all about? I mean, I did look at the website, and we'll be mentioning these websites later and helping people get connected to these groups. Rene, do you want to just sort of summarize what Swing Left is about right now ahead of the November 8th election?
Oh, well, yes. A lot of it has to do with voter empowerment and focusing our energies in a way that's going to make the difference, to really lay the groundwork for positive change. And so that would be, for flipping the House in 2018, and for this year it'll be to maintain the U.S. Senate, or to increase it, hopefully to increase it, and also to maintain the House of Representatives. So that will at least lay the groundwork for positive change. If we can get to the 52 Senate votes, then that would allow change of the filibuster, where there could be really significant change in so many ways.
Yeah. Okay, great. And if you are out there in K-Squid listener land and you want to call in, feel free to call in with your questions and comments at 831-900-5773. That is 831-900-5773. You can also send an email to onair@ksqd.org. That's onair@ksqd.org. So just to sort of lay some groundwork here for our conversation, I'm someone who kind of tracks the big picture stuff, and lately as a local candidate, I was a local candidate for office here. I was really getting involved in local politics and issues, and I started to lose track of all the races across the country, and that's what I'm hoping we can talk about, what needs to happen now. Where can people show up and help out? Where are Democrats trying to fund, really tight races? So that we're going to cover all of that for those of you who might be listening out there. If you're interested, get a pen and a notebook and write some things down. But I wanted to start with kind of an analysis of where we are. And Alvin, I feel like I've been Chicken Little since 2016 when Trump was elected. A lot of people knew exactly what that meant in 2016, and others not so much. There's a wonderful book called White Rage, which is about the white supremacist movement. The nuts and bolts of that movement, and how it reemerged under the candidacy and presidency of Donald Trump. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts, because I think what we're looking at now, when I say the midterms are coming, it's in my mind right now, it's like the fascists are coming. Whether it's racism or attacks on, trans individuals, the LGBTQ population, LGBTQ plus. We have a lot going on. What is your analysis of the situation? Let me try to make this a more specific question for you. But as a black man living in Alabama, after this, 4 years of Trump, and now 2 years of Biden. I know you're critical of Biden, and I know why. But share what your thoughts are about white supremacy and the situation we're in right now.
Well, going back to the election of Trump, you're right in that not only myself but so many other people knew exactly what Donald Trump stood for, what he represented, what he was speaking to. And it's a very old conversation. For me, he's just the continuation of that, if you will.
Right.
That Trump, among other things, say you will, he's a very clever marketer. And he tapped into this zeitgeist of white grievance. Again, this is a very old conversation that goes back to Governor George Wallace and many others like them. It's just that now Trump has metastasized into whether you want the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, which is just a smarter, more clever, more palpable version of Donald Trump, if you will. So, yeah, for me, Trump was nothing new. I was just disappointed that looking back on 2016, 2015, and, his ascendancy through the whole GOP, that so many people sat out because they couldn't see Hillary Clinton in the White House. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, among other things, we've got such a ultra-right swing to the Supreme Court that it's going to take a long time if ever, to recover from that, short of stacking the court, which President Biden's not a fan of.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that's something that I think you've been critical of the Biden administration for, is not really taking the bold steps, for instance, on policing or on the Supreme Court or on the filibuster.
Or on voting rights.
Yeah, right. And we have, and it's a dangerous situation. I mean, I just want to point out that one of the most recent sort of major political shifts to happen is the election of Giorgia Meloni in Italy. She is with the party Brothers of Italy, which is basically a neo-fascist party. She was a supporter of Mussolini all through her student leadership within the Brothers of Italy party. She is now the president of Italy. So that's not good. We have Viktor Orban in Hungary. The EU, the latest news is that he may be subject to withholding of billions of dollars from the European Union because of his attacks on freedom of the press, his repression of minorities and others in Hungary. I mean, he's just over the top. And of course, we know that the GOP and Fox News are both just love Meloni and Orban. We have Marine Le Pen in France. She may not be as much of a threat at the moment, but we have right-wing extremism and neo-fascism happening across the world, and it's all tied together. We have Steve Bannon supporting all of these people running to and fro, from here to Europe and so on and so forth. Roger Stone, some of you may know Roger Stone, one of the Trump's political consultants, who's also been a consultant advisor to the Proud Boys, who, as you may know, were very much a part of the January 6th insurrection. So there's a lot going on, and one of the things that concerns me is the normalizing of political violence, including Proud Boys showing up at a recent gay pride parade in the back of a van, ready to attack. These are things that we do not want to be in power. These trends cannot be in power in the United States, as far as I'm concerned. So let's go to Rene first, and then we will go to Julia about what is your sense of the importance of the moment that we're in. Rene, do you want to share some thoughts? Do you agree with me what I'm saying? Or
Sure, I do agree completely. Although we don't want to get paralyzed by our fear, but we want to be.
Help me not get paralyzed by my fear. Yeah, that's what this is about. What can we do? Yeah, go ahead.
but there's a lot for people to be aware of, and for instance, anyway, I'll just go where I want to go with this.
Yeah, go ahead.
In terms of Nevada, there's a lot of ultra-Trump, QAnon people that are running for Secretary of State, for instance, for Attorney General, for Governor.
Goodness, wow.
For Senate, and that we can't let that happen. All these, the dangers to our elections are really huge. But there is a pathway out, and there is a way to empower people, through all the tools that we do have, through social media, through canvassing. Canvassing is well established as one of the best ways to influence people, and it's very rewarding as well. Talking to voters face to face. There are other ways of doing that too, remotely. Of course, there's letter writing, there's phone banks, texting, and people just need to find out what works for them. What's their best way of impacting the election, so that we're in a place where positive change can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rene, I just have to acknowledge that you're one of those people. I met you after the Trump election at one of the many meetings of activists that suddenly were popping up everywhere. And I've known you as someone who just got to work, got down to business. Where do we need to go? What phone calls do we need to make? And you guys are actually trying to shuttle a carpool, vanpool people out to Reno, I believe, to actually do canvassing. And there's a special offer that you have, which we'll talk about at the end of the hour. So I just want to say I appreciate so much how much work you've been putting in.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And yeah, Nevada is very, very critical. We have a 50-50 Senate. We have a great incumbent candidate. The sole Latina in the whole Senate is there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is her name for those of us?
Senator Catherine Cortez Masto.
Okay.
And she isn't, greatly known outside of the state, but she's done a lot of good work in many, many areas for women's issues, for racial justice, environmental issues, and of course the difference is huge, as opposed to our opponent, which would then could push us back to 49 Democrats in the Senate, and that's going to result in not being able to confirm judges. And not be able to pass legislation. Mitch McConnell will be the majority leader, and so we don't want to go there.
No,
we want to go to get to 52. So each Senate seat is huge,
right?
And that can, if we can get past the filibuster, and bypass the two rogue senators, lots of positive things on climate change, voting rights, gun safety, you name it, can happen.
Yeah. And that's the other huge issue and crucial point that we're in terms of climate. carbon dioxide parts per million in the atmosphere, which is how scientists measure how much, of that one particular greenhouse gas, and there are many, how much is in the atmosphere. They measure it daily. We are at 417 parts per million. We are up three points from last year this time. And most scientists say, and conservative people, like that guy who does all the nature documentaries, his name is escaping me, who's always the voice, and he's a big climate activist in England. Do you guys know his name? It's not coming to me.
Many years ago?
No, he's still around. He's still
Okay.
around. You hear his voice all the time when you're looking at a polar bear or a seal.
Okay.
I can't remember his name, but
That's
anyway,
okay.
his documentary was saying, 420 parts per million. That's it, people. That's over the. If we hit that, we're.
Well, we see what's going on, the fires, the hurricanes, you name it. It's happening.
Right. It's happening now.
It doesn't take any... Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's sort of this doomerism that happens around, we can't do anything. And I like to point out how bad it is because I want people to activate, but we must mitigate for further chaos, right? It's so important that we keep CO2 levels down and try to pull them out of the atmosphere. And then we need the Democrats to do that because the Republicans aren't going to do diddly squat, and I include Joe Manchin in that crew. But let's go to Julia Daniel. You may have a whole new perspective. I don't know, or not a new, but a different perspective from the perspective of Showing Up for Racial Justice, which is a national organization of white people working to support people of color across the country. Do you have any thoughts about our situation now and what's important about the midterms, or how SURJ is viewing the midterms?
I agree with everything you all said and really appreciate it. And I think we think about crises as also holding the possibility for opportunity. So I think all of the points that y'all have been raising about kind of like escalating authoritarianism and being on the brink of fascism is really critical. And, we believe in mobilizing people and that white people have a huge role to play in pulling the country back from that, especially because the right has made such a concerted effort at mobilizing white people's fear and resentment. And so our work is really to make sure that white folks don't turn away in despair or in more fear, but that we continue to root in what we know is true, and that we reach out and talk to other white people to give them an opportunity to do something different.
Yeah.
And I think part of what this moment, 2022 especially is really salient, is that there is like collusion between the Republican Party and the far right, and the Republican Party is seeming to go along with a lot of what the far right is, and that can give us an opportunity to push the Democrats to do better. But we need to be very clear that we must defeat the Republicans and the MAGA bloc of the Republicans in particular if we're going to be able to push the Democrats to do anything. So I think a couple of the key places where we at SURJ are paying attention to this moment is like the way that between the Republicans and kind of these neo-fascist far-right groups are suppressing people's ability to vote. So like the legal suppression that you see in Georgia by the Republicans is coupled by this intimidation that neo-fascist groups are doing at the polls. So there's these watch parties at ballot drop boxes and things like that. And what we're
tell
hearing
us
on
what
the ground,
that is. What is a watch party at a ballot drop box?
Yeah, there's been kind of these conspiracy theories, promoted by people like DeSantis and right-wing groups that are getting these kind of like white nationalist groups riled up, and they're going and sitting with weapons at ballot drop boxes. And it's a old fashioned, we've seen it for a long time in this country, but it's a way of intimidating voters. And we've been on the ground talking to voters, and people are afraid and are nervous to go vote or to even drop their ballot at a ballot box. So that is an issue, and we need to encourage folks to continue to participate. And I think the Dobbs decision, Maurice Mitchell from the Working Families Party called it a shot across the bow. And I think there's a way that the Dobbs decision could be the kind of crisis that we can mobilize. It could be that the Republicans overestimated their power. And if we're able to take advantage of this kind of unprecedented surge of women, and in particular young women who are registering to vote,
Yes.
we could really do some amazing stuff. So if, we saw it in Kansas, shocked the nation by becoming the first state to take down an effective statewide abortion ban.
Yeah.
That was amazing. And
Here.
we have the opportunity to, super exciting. And we're working to do that in Kentucky now. So Kentucky is some folks in Kentucky are attempting to pass a full abortion ban and make it unconstitutional. And we've been making phone calls into Kentucky as part of a multiracial coalition called Protect Kentucky Access. We're calling white folks across the state and talking to them about protecting abortion access in November. So it's been really successful. We made 20,000 phone calls already, and the folks we're talking to generally are supportive when we talk to them. And then after one conversation, it's about 75% are supportive through one conversation. So it's been really great. The issue is, I think, making sure folks, again, do feel safe going and voting and just raising awareness. So we're really trying to drive folks into making phone calls and into this work, both in Georgia and in Kentucky.
Yeah.
As well as the work with See the Vote in Arizona and Nevada, which I can talk more about as well.
Okay, so just hang on to See the Vote, because we're going to devote the last 15 minutes of this show. Actually, we're going to sign off a little bit early because of First Person Singular, which comes up right before the next show. But we're going to talk about where you can go and what you can do, and whether you just have a little, whether you think you can help make phone calls, or if you're interested in where Democrats and progressives and showing up for racial justice are encouraging people to put their money. We'll talk about that as well. All of that is, I think, super important. I just want to take a little break and say that you are on KSQD 90.7 FM in Santa Cruz, California, your ink spot on the FM dial. And if you want to call into this program, you can call in at 831-900-5773. We just got a call.
And we do have a caller who wants to go on the air. You want to take a call?
Okay. Yes, please.
Okay, caller, you're on the air.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, who's this?
Excuse me, what?
Who is this? What's your name?
My name is Ed.
Okay, Ed, and you're from the Santa Cruz area?
Yes, I am,
Okay, go ahead. Do you have a question or comment for our guests today?
How to approach the midterms. We have to first recognize that we're in a whole lot of trouble immediately, under the Trump administration and causing a lot of problems and all. But we have to remember that the stage had been set for such an injury to the country, because our office holders are not being held accountable in any meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
And they are not only that, what's even worse is they're conducting all the public business in private, behind closed doors. That's where the lobbyist goes and meets with or communicates by texting or whatever with the office holder, and the office holder makes promises to the lobbyist, and the lobbyist makes promises to the office holder, and we don't hear about that. All we hear about is after the law has been enacted, we get the consequences.
Right.
So and then there's no way to hold a national conversation, and to hold them accountable and to give a voice to all the people. So many millions of Trump voters feel that they don't have any voice. And as far as that goes, so do millions of Democrats and independents. There's no way for the citizens to communicate directly in public and an ongoing conversation so that we get some rationality into our office holders. The office holders are out of control. They're acting like robots or worse in the legislatures.
Okay, Ed, let me go to our speakers and see if they have any comments. I mean, I do want to share with you all the guests, that I certainly get a lot of pushback from people who are sort of further left, perhaps, than I am. I just think we have different strategies. But there's a sense that, the entire Congress is bought and sold. I look at candidates out there and I see some hope. I see some hopeful. I like some people that I see. I don't know if I'm just being naive, but I feel like that we are seeing younger, more progressive Democrats. When I look at the Swing Left website, I'm seeing, half the people that Swing Left is supporting are people of color, including Jay Chen of California, District 45. That doesn't mean that a person of color is going to necessarily be progressive, but someone was about to say something. Who was that?
Probably me.
Go.
Well, what a start.
Yeah.
I would simply say that as far as all of the lobbying activity that takes place in Washington and that historically has taken place in Washington,
yes,
I tend to look at it like this, that nature abhors a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
And if we as the citizenry were more active and engaged, and I don't just mean during the midterms or during election season, because that's one of my criticisms of the Democratic Party at large. We tend to be largely reactionary.
Okay.
But if the citizenry were more active, informed on the issues, and engaged, these kinds of things would not and could not happen. They simply could not happen.
Mm-hmm.
They happen because most of us, many of us, for varying reasons, because we're busy trying to put food on the table and a roof over our heads or whatever that is, or we're giving ourselves to largely mindless entertainment with television and video games and social media, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Are you talking about me right now?
I don't know.
How did you know? Okay, go ahead. I just do that at night when I'm tuckered out, but go ahead.
More than a sizable chunk of the population is disengaged from the politics.
It's very disappointing.
Or the goings-on of our government. We've forgotten that we are the government. The government is not the people that we send to Washington.
That's
At the
right.
end of the day, they represent us, or they're supposed to represent us.
That's right.
They don't represent us because we don't demand that they represent us.
That's right. It's
because
our money,
we vote
too.
for them
Mm-hmm.
and we go back to our lives.
Yeah.
We go back to our busyness.
Yeah. Yeah.
This could not happen if there weren't this vacuum.
Yeah. I mean, when the public gets galvanized, like around, for instance, when they were going to repeal the Affordable Care Act after Trump got elected, and people were en masse, at their Republican senators and congresspeople's offices, up in arms about it, there was no way they could repeal that. So
That's right.
And that's what happens when we get engaged. And we're hoping, as Julia pointed out, that the Roe v. Wade decision, the Supreme Court just overturning Roe v. Wade, will galvanize a bunch of women. And Julia, what you were talking about in terms of these intimidation, this is like, the South in the 1960s, right? I mean, intimidation efforts at the polls.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. It's, and that was an education for me that we have not come very far. If we can get into a backlash that is this huge in 2016, 2020, 2022, where we are today, where we're seeing the same kinds of tactics that were happening in the Deep South and elsewhere, where Black people were being intimidated from voting, and who knows what's going to happen coming up.
What's happened in the Deep South is happening all over the country.
Yeah, yeah.
The United States is Alabama.
Right. Julia, were you trying to say something too? I heard.
Oh, no, I wasn't, but I agree. It's that old, I think it's a Du Bois quote, as goes the South, so goes the nation. And I think it's so important to pay attention to how the right has really strategically tried to divide white people and get white people to blame Black people and immigrants in the South.
Yeah.
And that is what they test it there and then they try to expand it. And so it's really critical to make sure we're also organizing in the South.
Yeah. Okay. And Ed, thank you so much for your question. Are you satisfied so far? Can we move on?
I would just like very briefly to tell Alvin how I propose to fill the vacuum that he identifies. The vacuum being we have no dialogue, we have no information, we have nothing to hold them accountable. we should amend the Constitution, demand that our Congress members amend the Constitution to require every office holder to wear cameras and microphones whenever they're conducting public business.
Wow.
Just the way we say with policemen, police officers. And then furthermore, all the written communications and all the text messages and emails, et cetera, put those up on the internet every day.
Oh, good job. Yeah, that's a good idea.
It is the people's business, is it not?
It's the people's business. Okay, Ed, thank you so much for your call. We're going to have to move on because we're running out of time.
Well, there's one last aspect, and that is put them on TV every 30 days. On TV, every office holder across the table from a citizen or that citizen's appointed proxy spokesperson.
Wow.
For a happy conversation. And thanks for the opportunity to lay this out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Ed, for calling in. Those are great ideas. And I think, and also they speak to what Alvin's saying is we have to galvanize ourselves to get these ideas even going, because they're not going to go if we don't step up to the plate. And then what Julia is talking about in terms of voter intimidation, like that is even more so a call for white people who don't have the trauma associated with voter suppression to get out there and vote and to help protect voters of color across the country coming up in these midterms. Is that, do you think that's about right, Julia?
Yeah, exactly. There's actually a really excellent candidate. You were talking about great movement candidates, Bee Nguyen, who's running for Secretary of State in Georgia, that we're endorsing. And it'll be really important, obviously, to have secretaries of state that want to fight voter suppression and believe in defending multiracial democracy. And so,
and you have Stacey Abrams in Georgia too, and running for governor. And then what is this name? Could you spell it out?
Bee Nguyen, so it's Bnguyen, and she's really wonderful. I think she's got a good shot, and it's going to be really a turnout gain. So we're making phone calls and knocking on doors, and so if folks wanted to get involved with SURJ and take action on that, you can go to SURJ, so it's SURJ.org, and look for the Bloch, Build, Grow midterms work. And help make phone calls, send texts. We're doing it both into Georgia for those candidates as well as into Kentucky to stop this harmful abortion ban and help elect folks. And then we're also working, SURJ Action California is working with Seed the Vote and sending our folks to Canvas in Reno, Nevada and Phoenix, Arizona through Unite Here, the union. And so if you are interested in going to either Nevada or Arizona, you can link up with Seed the Vote or SURJ Action California through seedthevote.org. And I think we might try and put those links in the show notes as well. But we think those are like both two really important ways of getting involved and like helping to, build a movement of white people who understand we actually have a shared interest in fighting fascism, as well as defining a much bolder vision of what all of our communities deserve. And that includes a multiracial democracy where we all have the ability to say what we want for our communities, as well as make sure those communities are resourced and get the investments we need, and we can turn to an actual green economy so that we're not still talking about looming carbon emissions or, watching these hurricanes in Florida today. Yeah. And it is, it is a crisis to say the least. And so trying to make it also an opportunity in blocking MAGA and building a more progressive future.
Great. I just want to say, too, I know a couple of the local organizers here in Santa Cruz, Aaron and Angeli, who are with SURJ, who are showing up. I see them at every, event that they are invited to that is being sponsored by and about people of color. So they're amazing. So if you get involved with SURJ, showing up for racial justice, you can, also get involved locally and be in community with others who are working right here in Santa Cruz County. So I just want to share that, too. I also wanted to bring up, I think a lot of people are feeling trepidatious about this vote because we have, I believe it's the North Carolina Supreme Court decision that may actually be decided before the election. And we know ballots are dropping here like in 2 weeks or something or less, so this is now, this election. And, the Supreme Court, my understanding about the North Carolina decision is that it's about allowing the states more power to control how they decide who has won an election at the state level rather than the federal level. Rene, can you comment on that? And then we're going to go to Alvin. I'm interested in that and just all the efforts at trying to change election systems to rig the elections for actually Republicans that you see, and how dangerous, how far have they gone, and what do we think this election can still be fair?
There's a great need for voter protection people
right.
also.
Yeah.
So that's in all the states. There's also a voter protection hotline. There's training provided. You need to understand how to answer the questions, and then if it's beyond your understanding, you refer the question on to a higher level and that type of thing. But that's really important. And in Nevada, in particular, there's big concerns about the integrity, where that's going to go, and in Washoe County and in Las Vegas, and some of the other counties too, where there's actually a county clerk that's what do you call it? Al-Anon.
QAnon.
Yeah.
Maybe Al-Anon and QAnon, but mostly QAnon is what, which is just to let people know, it's a conspiracy theory that has deep anti-Semitic roots, and is based on the same propaganda that the Nazis used and that the Russians used in their anti-Jewish programs. So this is very dangerous stuff, but go ahead. Yeah, to have someone who's...
So, the voter protection is definitely one of the ways that people can get involved, which is, anyway, ultimately people can contact me or the websites that we'll talk about later. But it's pretty dangerous, yeah. For many Secretary of States are supporting the election denier philosophy and still don't accept the election and are willing to turn things around and turn elections on their head, like what was attempted in 2020.
Yeah. And Alvin, do you have a comment on the North Carolina case? Are you tracking that? That's the one that the Supreme Court would somehow give more power to the states to decide which electors to send or what have you.
Well, yeah, essentially the short of it is that the state legislature and said state would have the final word as to which way to swing their votes in that particular state,
even for president or federal level votes.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That bill did pass the House, and I think it's in the Senate now. Isn't that right?
A bill to protect against that?
To change the electoral act.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
I think McConnell was supporting
that. It did
that
pass
too.
the House.
Yeah, and I think
it passed the House, but it's in the Senate, and it looks good.
It looks good. I think Republicans will be supporting it. Republicans who don't totally want to be subsumed by,
I suspect so,
MAGA and Trumpism. But will
just
that
to bear 10 to make it to 60? Yeah.
Yeah, but will that protect us against the Supreme Court decision?
Not necessarily.
It won't do everything.
Okay. So, and
it'll prevent, someone like Pence from saying that, okay, or whoever the vice president is, that the election wasn't good, so we're all sending it back to the states. Those types of things.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll stop
the most extreme things
once the votes have gotten to the Congress, but it won't prevent what's happening in any of the states because those can be decided at the state level. That even the state Supreme Court
all those down races are really
even
important.
The state Supreme Court can't overrule the state legislature.
The state legislature, and so we're worried about legislatures that have Republican majorities and that are
the goal is to Nevada's barely Democratic, and we want to hold it. And for instance, Arizona is Republican, but very close to flipping. So all those down races need to be talked about when we're talking to people on the door or the phones.
Okay, and so Rene, we're going to talk about what you're offering, and hey, free lodging in Reno, people at a casino. And Alvin, you had something else to add.
Well, again, I'm thinking not just about the upcoming election because we really are in a crisis moment. I know we say that often enough, but
every day
we really are. At this point, it's the difference between authoritarianism and a representative republic.
Exactly.
And having said that, I'll just say that the Democratic Party, again, my beef with the Democratic Party is that we need to start thinking more long term. We need to stop thinking just past the current election cycle or reacting to, whatever that is. For instance, it just seems that so many Democrats are really afraid to confront or speak to critical race theory. For instance, it's like they're running from it. They don't know how to have a conversation around it. I'm talking about present candidates. So we need to think more long term. And I say that because what happened with the Dobbs decision was easily predicted. I saw this coming. So that, and I applaud the what happened in Kansas more recently, and the hundreds of thousands, the millions of women that came out in force. They stormed the steps of the Supreme Court, state houses all over the country. My question is, where were these women during the Supreme Court decisions that gutted the Voting Rights Act? The Brnovich decision, Shelby County versus Holder.
Yeah.
Because all of this is connected, folks. This is all interconnected.
Yeah.
And I don't think we get that. I don't think we see that. We're in a climate where, what was a poll that said that while 60 something plus % of women were in support of reproductive rights, Roe v. Wade, over 60 something %, yet only around 30% of women believe that Roe would be overturned. How can that exist unless we're in a climate where, again, people are largely disengaged?
Yeah.
Because I saw this coming way back in the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that speaks to, what Julia's been speaking to as well, which is just we need to have solidarity. It's been such an eye-opening awakening and education for me to be exposed to all these books around, the Black Lives Matter movement and Indigenous history and understanding that, authoritarianism starts with probably the most vulnerable, but it's going to ratchet on up the ladder and be on top of everybody, that isn't white nationalist Christian male, for example, is what it looks like right now. Julia, we have maybe about 5, 6, 7 minutes left on the show, so I want to make sure that we cover how people can get involved. I'm looking at the SURJ website at surj.org, and you mentioned a campaign called Block, Build, and Grow, which says here, this is a program designed to block white supremacist organizing, build progressive political power in key southern and Midwestern states, and grow our collective base of anti-racist white people trained in using electoral work as a tool to bring millions of white people alongside communities of color to win progressive power. That sounds good to me. Is there anything you want to add about what people can do with SURJ? I know there's local campaigns and little things that happen in not little things, but big things in those communities that you also work on. Do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. Yeah, I just really also second what Alvin was saying and think it's so important that as white people, we're talking to white people instead of oftentimes we want to be the good white person. And so we want to distance ourselves from other white people. And that is how the right has been able to move into these rural communities as well as, middle-class liberal Northeastern communities. And so we think it's really important that we are organizing other white folks. Like I said, Kentucky is right now poised to be the second state to protect abortion rights by popular vote. Being a part of this kind of multiracial work is a really essential way that we can build power and break the power of the right. And this is really important to do in the South and to do in states where our assessment is that people have the most to gain, right? So I think that's why you see the right and you see the Proud Boys or the 3% kind of going into communities and offering a sense of belonging or meeting people's material needs and then organizing them into white nationalism. We really need to be peeling people away from that and promoting a vision in which we're demanding that our material needs are met, that we're getting investment, and that includes talking about race, because race has been used, like overturning the Voting Rights Act is exactly a piece of it, as well as the Dobbs decision was the result of a very clear white supremacist strategy, especially focused on the South and using dog whistle politics to stigmatize Black communities and Black mothers. And that has been used to further disinvestment.
Wait, can you back up for a second? Just we're going to have to jump from you to Rene pretty quickly, but the Dobbs decision was a result of a white supremacist strategy in the South. Could you explain that a little more?
Yeah, the Southern strategy, which was crafted by, oh goodness, I'm forgetting his name, under Nixon.
Alvin would know.
Richard Nixon.
Lewis Powell, I think, wasn't it?
No,
the Powell memo was a piece
there's a Powell memo, but anyway, let's move on. It was a consultant, a strategist. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
It'll
but they
come
basically,
to me. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's that, being able to talk about race without talking about race. And as the gains of the civil rights were happening, I think the Republican Party really figured out they needed to shore up a white base in order to maintain control, and that people, I think, like Jerry Falwell and them, were able to go in and really mobilize evangelicals around abortion. It wasn't a huge issue that they were organizing before that.
No, it was not.
Yeah. So then they shored up a base and using, like kind of low key, if not explicit, white supremacist ideas that built, this governing power, as well as kind of cultural movement that became this like right to life, as well as just a far right bloc that promotes their economic interests as well, right? And peels white people off from being in multiracial solidarity.
Right.
Which makes it really critical that we are in those communities and organizing and talking to folks about we actually have a shared interest in a multiracial solidarity, whether it's because we want autonomy over our bodies or because we know that we need more resources in our communities.
Yeah, Julia, we have a phone call, and so I'm going to have to interrupt you for a second. Is this person on the line with us, or did they leave? It sounds like they hung up. Or no? Do we? Never mind. That's okay, because we're running out of time. But Julia, I'm hearing you say that being anti-abortion or using abortion as a wedge issue, kind of to separate white people, particularly evangelical white people, from people of color and others who are working class with them, who could form a powerful voting bloc if they got together. But let's not have that. Is sort of what I'm hearing. Yeah. And we need to go to Rene with Swing Left because we're running out of time. When you go to Swing Left, let's see, what is the website? swingleft.org, I believe. Yes, it is. And there's all kinds of places to go. And you can make Democrats who are interested can make donations that will then go to campaigns where Swing Left has already done the research to figure out like where can we make the most difference. I'm looking at Sherry Beasley in North Carolina for Senate, Jevin Hodge in Arizona District 1, Jay Chen in California, Orange County, who would overturn that district from red to blue. Wiley Nickel, all kinds of people, people of color, Amelia Sykes, Ohio. Rene, talk about what people can do with Swing Left and what they can do with you in Reno.
Sure, that's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that information. And there's the Swing for information, swingleft.org, but also we have the local website, which is not fancy, but it has all our local actions. swingleftSantaCruz.org. And then I'll give you my email as well, just because sometimes it's just more detail that's needed.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's just simple, just Rene Bloch, ReneBloch @gmail.com. So we have, numerous things that people can do. So the canvassing is ideal and best. Not everyone can do that, but that's the most effective thing.
That's
Nevada,
live,
Reno,
walking door to door. Go
walking
ahead.
and talking to people. It's amazing. It's really interesting, really fun. And hearing people out, what their concerns are, and getting an idea of where they're at, and then of course that information is then shared with the candidate, and they can come back and continue the conversation. So
okay, Rene, but talk about Reno, the free lodging, because we're down to 1 minute, so you got to.
Okay. So yeah, if people go to Reno, of course they can stay. I can arrange. You can stay with people, local people there. There's also a Las Vegas opportunity.
Oh, Las Vegas. Okay.
Well, yeah, Las Vegas, where people can stay in the hotels there. If you contact me, that can happen. So if you're willing to canvass, you can stay in the hotels there. That's a sure thing. But what's the
hotel? What's the name of one of the hotels?
Well, all I know is they're MGM hotels.
Okay, there you go. MGM Vacation in Las Vegas, and you're canvassing, and we're going to have to go. Did you want to just give your phone number, Rene, and then we got to go?
Okay. Well, I'll give you my email once again.
Okay.
The phone number, 408-206-2199.
Okay.
And there's lots of other opportunities as well, the letter writing and the calling, that sort of thing. But the canvassing would be great.
Okay, we got to go, Rene. I'm sorry, we have to cut you off. We've got another person coming into the studio. I want to thank everyone for joining us on Talk of the Bay, and you're on KSQD 90.7 FM, your ink spot on the dial.